Hi, David here, and welcome back to the channel where we're looking at life in spirit through the automatic writings of the early 20th century medium James Padgett. In this video, we're going to look at quite a long message to James from a friend, Ross Perry, who passed to spirit by taking his own life, and who takes the time to explain to James why he did it and what consequences he has faced in spirit as a result. I'm also going to include a very brief message to James from a fellow lawyer, John Critcher, who explains his disappointment in what he found when he passed to spirit, although his situation sounds a little easier than that of Ross Perry. The message from Perry begins as follows. I am here, your late friend, Perry. I want to tell you that I am in a condition of great darkness and suffering, and I am not able to find a way out or to relieve myself from my tortures. I know that you may think it strange that I did not listen to Riddle when you brought him in contact with me a short time ago. So this is not the first time Perry has contacted James. Often what James did when approached by someone in need was to put them in touch with someone from his spirit band of helpers. So it appears Perry was put in touch with Anthony Riddle, whom we've heard from a few times already. Perry continues, I could not believe what he told me, or understand in what way the darkness would leave me by merely praying to God and trying to believe that there is such a thing as God's love, which I might obtain by letting my belief in what he said become sufficiently strong to cause me to forget the recollections of my awful deeds. So Riddle has obviously explained to Perry that divine love is a real thing and that it is obtained through prayer, and that it is available to Perry if he chooses to seek it, just as it is for everyone. Perry, like so many, has trouble accepting this, even though he sees quite readily that Riddle's spiritual condition is so much better than his own. As Perry says, I saw that he was a wonderfully bright spirit and seemed to be so very happy in his condition of belief. But nevertheless, I was not able to believe that it was the result of what he told me. And so I am in the same condition that I was when I wrote you last. So Perry hasn't acted on what he was told, and it becomes obvious from what he goes on to say that he is still trapped in the thinking that got him into this condition in the first place. My friend, for such I believe you to be, or you would not be able to interest yourself in me as you have, I want to tell you that if only I could shoot myself again, and by that means end my existence, and I mean annihilate my spirit and soul, so that they would go into nothingness, I would gladly and quickly pull the trigger and send the bullet into that spot, which would bring about the desired effect. I realize now that I must continue to exist and to suffer. For how long, I don't know, but it seems to me forever and ever. One factor in Perry having committed suicide was the hope that it would at least offer an end to the suffering he experienced on Earth. Part of the tragedy of suicide is that it offers no relief from anything. Destroying the physical form never has the effect of killing the person, who risks finding themselves in an even worse condition than they were in by adding fresh regrets, which Perry shares with us. Oh, why did I do such a thing? I had no reason to take my life as far as earthly things were concerned, for I needed nothing of the material to make life satisfactory. Well, I will tell you. As you may know, I was, as I thought, something of a philosopher on earth, and to me life was a thing to retain or put off, just as I might think it had served its purpose. When I felt that I could no longer do any special good in the world, or to those who were near to me, I thought that there was no reason why I should continue any longer the life which was one of monotony in a certain sense. And besides, I felt that I had arrived at the height of my mental powers and that they were on the decline. And the thought that I should decrease in what I had so striven to cultivate and display to my acquaintances caused me to believe that the object of my creation had been fulfilled, and that I would gradually become not only an encumbrance, but a person to be looked upon with a kind of pity, which would cause me much unhappiness. To have others point their finger at me and say, "There goes poor Perry, who used to be such a brilliant and capable man, and who is now intellectually a mere wreck of himself. Isn't it a pity that such a man should come to a condition that he has come to?" Perry expresses very clearly the fear of losing the esteem and regard of those who know him. In saying this, he does rather sound like someone who does not know what it is like to be loved for his own sake. He fears not mattering or not being respected, and this does indicate a certain emptiness in his life. He continues, "These are some of the thoughts that entered my mind, and in addition, as I have told you, I thought that death was the end of all, and that in the grave I would know nothing and sleep in utter oblivion. I fed on these thoughts some while before I decided to die, and the more I thought, the greater became my condition that what I had said would prove to be true. Just before I fired the fatal shot, I thought intensely of all these things, and saw what I supposed would be an end to everything, and the true solution to life's decay, mental as well as physical decrepitude." That's a highly significant thing for Perry to say. Spiritual development is so often about the things we choose to pay attention to and the kind of thoughts we are in the habit of having. A major difficulty is that we might not be consciously aware of what lies behind our choices, and the habits or frame of mind that we inhabit might simply be an unthinking reaction to what other people have thrown our way. A child who grows up being criticized negatively most of the time will likely find that this tone becomes their inner voice, making this world a joyless place for them. A child who learns early on that such love as is shown to them is conditional on certain behaviors does not experience love as something joyful and freeing, instead resenting it as something controlling. Perry reminds us just how difficult it is to step outside ourselves so as to escape the bubble of our own thoughts. He continues, "And when I prepared to do the deed, I was never more calm than in all my life. It did not require any courage on my part, for the conviction of the correctness of my conclusions was so strong that the question of courage was not part of the equation. Men may think that courage is a necessity to commit suicide, but I tell you that courage forms no part of a man's condition of mind when he commits that deed. I have no doubt, though, that in bringing his mind to the condition that I have spoken of, that is, in feeling that the burdens of life are too great, or that he cannot further bear the things which duty calls upon him to do, he may be, and often is, a coward. I must not write more on this theme now. I am more interested in finding a way, if possible, out of this intense darkness and suffering." So Perry has come up with a very clear rationale for what he did. Although Perry casts his thoughts in the form of general comments as to why one might commit suicide, these thoughts are, of course, very specific to him. Perry's example is a powerful reminder that a life of duty without love can be unbearable for some. But it is important also to remember that this is only one of many possible routes to despair. It's perhaps worth noting that love, or its lack, is not mentioned by Perry. Perhaps he never learned its importance. At this point, James Padgett asks Perry if he has seen Anthony Riddle recently. Perry replies, "I have not seen Mr. Riddle since my first interview, and I do not think that I would be benefited by seeing him. Because, for one thing, the great contrasts in our conditions only intensify my sufferings, and hence I prefer to remain to myself, or among spirits like myself. You know that on earth the poor are much happier with the poor than when thrown into the company of the rich, and this is because of the apparent greater happiness of the latter. And so it is with me. When I see Riddle in his happiness, I feel that my misery is all the greater." As we've seen in previous videos, one of the things that holds us back is feeling our own unworthiness in the face of those whose spirit shines more brightly than our own. It makes us feel uncomfortable and embarrassed. We simply don't want to be seen. This is a universal obstacle to asking for help. And it's the reason why, when people ask me where we go when we die, I nearly always say that we go to a place where we are not embarrassed by our own nature. Perry's comments are a perfect example of this. At this point, Padgett seems to tell Perry that despite Padgett's own feelings of unworthiness, he is visited by many spirits and is even used by Jesus for the purpose of writing about divine love, so that the knowledge of it can be shared in this world. Perry replies, "I am astonished at what you say, for I never really believed in Jesus as you tell me of him. I could not, when on earth, believe in him as a god, and I thought that he was only an idea of human minds, and that as to his actual historical or earthly existence, it was a mere fable. But now you tell me that he really exists and is working in the spirit world to help fallen and dark spirits, and that he comes to you and tells you of his love and work. Well, I won't say that I can't believe you, but I prefer to wait until I see him myself, and then if he appears to me, as you say, I will be ready to believe what Riddle told me about prayer and the love of God. When on earth, I merely considered you to be like the rest of us. Now I am told that you know many things that I never thought any mortal could know. Well, astonishment upon astonishment. And all, as you say, to help me and to lead me to the light. Yes, that is what I want, light. So, my dear friend, let me say that I thank you with all my heart and hope that I may be able to come to you again and say that what you promised me I have received. Your friend, R. Ross Perry." So what Padgett has done for Perry here is to reinforce what Anthony Riddle has told Perry about divine love, in the hope that this will help Perry to overcome his reluctance to trust in what he has been told. Even Perry, in his somewhat darkened condition, will be able to see that Padgett is expressing something that he trusts in and that he is being honest as to what that is. Perry will see this more clearly as a spirit than he might have done when still in the body, which is why he describes himself as astonished to hear these things from Padgett, who is, as Perry puts it, still a mortal, yet knows these things. It's often the case in the Padgett messages that we see Padgett's words having a greater effect upon people in spirit than the words of more highly developed spirits. Partly perhaps because their conversations with Padgett do not involve that same element of embarrassment that we saw described by Perry. Perry ends the message expressing the hope that he will be able to contact Padgett again and to report progress. This does in fact happen, although the next message we have from Perry is, I think, in 1917, about 18 months later. Perry then describes himself as still a bit weak, but he has clearly made progress because his mother also comes forward to thank Padgett for the guidance given to her son. That might seem like a small thing, but it suggests that Perry has advanced enough to get past the awkwardness of meeting his mother. Imagine for a moment what someone might feel having committed suicide upon meeting their own mother. That sense of embarrassment we've discussed is probably going to be a major obstacle. So that later message, I think, shows Perry going on to make significant progress. So who knows how beautiful he has become in the years since then. I could stop the video there, but I've already said we're going to look at a short message from John Critcher. So let's give him his moment. This message is from November 7, 1915. I am here, John Critcher. You must remember me, for I had my office in the same building as you when I practiced law. Well, I am in a condition that gives me considerable happiness, and yet I am not in that state of happiness which I expected to have when I was on earth. As you know, I was an Episcopalian, the Anglican Communion, and tried to observe strictly the doctrines and formalities of my church, and expected when I died to go to heaven and find rest, and nothing to make me unhappy. But in this I was mistaken, and I found myself in the first sphere of the spirit world, and had to undergo some suffering and darkness, and did not find the heavenly rest that I expected. I have progressed since I came over, and am now happier and in more light. So John Critcher gives us another example of the importance of inner development, whether of the natural human love or, preferably, through sharing in divine love. And no amount of attending church or synagogue or mosque or temple is going to make up for that. I've mentioned a few times that most people on leaving the earth life find themselves in the second sphere in spirit. So John ending up in the first means that he has given himself a tougher beginning in spirit than some. He closes the message with an interesting comment about how he came to write to James. I was passing when I saw the light that comes from your room, and looked in and saw you, and asked permission to write. And your band consented, and so I am writing. So thanking you, I am your friend, John Critcher. So Padgett, sitting in his study at home on his own, and working with his spirit band, was part of a light that was visible to this passing spirit. It's an interesting thing to note, and gives us a little insight into how it was that so many people in spirit, seeking some sort of light in the darkness, were drawn to Padgett. Even a single candle in the dark can be seen from a long way off, and by many people. A nice little reminder for each of us to do what we can while we're here. In the next video in this midweek series, 211, I'll be taking you through another message from Joseph Salyards, Padgett's old law professor. We've heard from Professor Salyards a few times already, and he's always worth listening to, sharing his progress as he learns and experiences more in spirit. The next video in the Divine Love series will be video 1010 this coming Sunday, where we'll be looking at a message from Lazarus, who is famous for being recorded in the New Testament as someone Jesus raised from the dead. We see in this message that it is not quite what happened, but the story in John's Gospel, as it has come down to us, is based on a real event. So I hope you'll join me for one or other of those. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe if you can, as it does help to introduce the material to others. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care until then. Bye-bye.